What is a narcissist?
It's very interesting, isn't it? Because the word has definitely gained popularity. It's a real buzzword now, whereas you only need to tick back 10 years ago and hardly anyone knew about narcissism, what it was. Most people had never even heard the word before. So things have changed a lot, particularly in the last 5 years, but definitely over the last 10 years, we've seen really big changes. But essentially, in terms of narcissism, and to understand narcissistic abuse, we really do have to also understand what narcissism is and what it isn't,
Mm-hmm.
in order to understand what's happening when someone's been in a narcissistic abusive situation. But with narcissism, I see it, the way I explain it is narcissistic behaviors are on a spectrum, just like any human behaviors, so you can get a whole range of different intensities and behaviors that are contained within a narcissistic personality, if you like. Um, and so, when you look at it in a spectrum, you begin to realize that it's not just one thing, or just because someone says he or she's a narcissist doesn't actually mean that they're a person with narcissistic personality disorder. And so, when I explain the spectrum, I would say that narcissistic personality disorder sits right at the very end of that spectrum. And some people, yes, do get diagnosed with that. And that's a very specific personality disorder. And a lot of categories kind of need to be ticked in order for someone to be having that. And
Mm-hmm.
that's only something that could be diagnosed by a psychologist or a psychiatrist. And the interesting thing is, when people have narcissistic traits and qualities, they generally don't go to therapy. They're not the sort of people to go to therapy. And they're definitely not usually, unless there's, it's been court ordered or something like that, they're not usually the type of person to go, hey, I think I've got narcissistic personality disorder. Can you diagnose me? They don't like that language. They usually don't like the label, and they're not likely to go and get themselves tested. So there's probably a lot of people that have that, but are just not diagnosed because it comes with the territory. They're not the sort of people to go and see a psychologist anyway. However, if we know that there is this particular personality disorder that fits the description of a narcissist, but it's quite intense and it's quite specific, we've also got all the behaviors and all of these kind of different levels of intensity that exist in human nature that are what I call traits or behaviors, or even energy, So when people come to me and they're trying to figure out if they've been in a relationship with someone who's narcissistic, we really work with that spectrum. And it's really not about saying, yes, this person has NPD, but more about, well, what traits and behaviors have you been seeing? What have you been experiencing from this person? And in terms of those behaviors and traits, they tend to be, well, commonly very controlling. So control is a very big factor when it comes to narcissistic behaviors, but also very manipulative with that control too. So sometimes it doesn't necessarily need to be overt control. It can be very covert control. So there's usually an element of great degrees of control and manipulation. And then there's also a lot of drama that comes with narcissistic behavior as well. They really like to create a lot of drama to keep everyone else on their toes and kind of keep everyone else guessing. And so, there's a whole list of different traits and qualities that would fit into narcissistic personalities. And, it would probably take us a long time to kind of go through all of that. But if you think about narcissistic people with narcissistic traits being very controlling, being very manipulative, really enjoying creating drama to get their own way, they also tend to be very grandiose. And even people that are more covert or more undercover with their narcissism, they're still grandiose. They just do it in a very different way, so the internal thinking is still very grandiose and over the top, rather than, what most people would assume as kind of a normal, natural way of being in the world. narcissists tend to be very extreme, very over the top, very grandiose, even the ones that don't appear to be, if that makes sense.